So thanks everybody. So Don and I are here and we're going to share this presentation, and you'll see that we're going to share it by the certificates in the slides too. So Don's done a lot of the quantitative work and I looked at some of the qualitative answers. And so you will probably have filled in the survey that came around. So what we're going to do is talk to you about some of the survey results. Now, the survey is still not closed, it's open. So if you haven't filled in our survey, please do so. And we'll close it reasonably soon. Don't know when. And then we'll do a proper analysis of it. But at the moment, we've just done something, pretty quick analysis to present to you today. So
just you, Julia.
it's just you, Julia, yeah. So the survey was all about maths exams and what will the new normal look like and who gets to decide. And so this is a project that I've been doing with Don and with Michael. And thank you to everybody for filling in this survey and Don and Michael for picking up the net. I'm going to just say in the first instance, so the question is, why did we do the survey? And it's pretty clear that maths assessment has been impacted severely, maybe for the better, maybe not for the better, through the pandemic. And more so, at least in our experience, than other disciplines have been maybe. We don't, it's clearly impacted on lots of people. But for maths assessment, it's been a really hard nut to crack to see how to deal with it. So why did we do it? So, and this is where I'm going to mention. So really we started thinking about this because Kaz Sanderson, who runs the maths show at Wollongong, contacted us at first year in maths and said, can you give me some advice about who's doing what in maths assessment? There's something going badly wrong at Wollongong and I just want to find out if this is across the country. So Michael and Don and Leanne and I had a conversation with Kaz, and I just want to read you something that she said to me, and there's going to be something in here that I'd like you to keep in your mind until after the presentation. So I want to express my thanks to all who have responded so quickly regarding online exams, because I have some good news. After the response from this team, I was spurred on to take up the fight with our DVCA. I sent a simple email to request that we be allowed to run our exams, but scheduled centrally. I referred to the academic integrity issue and that maths around the country has struggled with online exams for the last 2 years. To my surprise, he responded to my email. However, I was sent a comment that 11 out of the 12 universities in the ACT and New South Wales were running their exams online. I then replied to say, just because 10 of my friends were stealing doesn't make it right that I steal, and that we should not compromise academic integrity. In the end, she was able to run the exams on campus, but they had to organise it. So she thanked us for our input because it really helped to influence what happened in her institution. And she said, this is the important bit. The academic integrity point fell on deaf ears. So it wasn't that shifted her DVCA's view. However, the mention of other institutions allowing maths to run in-person exams caught his attention. So if you know any DVCAs, you know that they, as leaders of your university, respond very well to what other leaders of other universities do because they don't want to be left out in lots of cases. So that's really the point here, is that sometimes we think, and we've had this in FYiMaths before, as a single voice at a single university, you don't have much sway. But if you can mount a case and talk about what's happening across the country, sometimes you get a bit of input. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. We responded to Kaz, we decided to do a survey, and we thought since it was out there in the world, we might as well send it to the world. And we've now received 145 responses, and that's going up. We sent it just through our local network, so the people from Kettle Emsall, who you saw yesterday, Mark, who spoke yesterday. So we've had quite a lot of interest from the UK, from the group that was set up in Canada along with FYiMaths lines. They've had a lot of input from North America and also from Ireland, Middle East, and of course from New Zealand. So we've had some really good responses. So what we're going to report on today, it's just on the Australia and New Zealand section. There's a lot of data there that we just haven't had
time to analyse it. So that's background, and
So,
my job.
okay, so as well, I'll just give you some numbers and then Deb will fill in largely what they mean. But this is what we were looking at with responses so far. Total of 57, 44 from Australia, mostly New South Wales and Victoria. I've grouped Queensland, South Australia and Western Australia as one. So we'd certainly like some more responses from those states and anywhere else that is represented. There's no one from Tasmania here. But that's the total of what we've got. In terms of what format will you use, this is the picture. As you can see, the largest group, and people are allowed to give multiple responses here, which has sort of blurred a few lines. So we probably have to tease this apart a little bit more. But certainly the largest group, the largest thing that's being used is online unsupervised exams, and from the discussion that we've had in the last 2 days, I don't think I need to say much more about those. The mixture of online on-campus is reasonably high. On-campus supervised, a few, seven groups doing no final exams, and a few take-home papers.
And we've separated those numbers out. So if somebody's been counted as online unsupervised, they're not double counted in the online on campus. So those are different categories for us. So some people running hybrid versus only online or only on campus, that counted as different.
Yeah. So I think it's back to you after this one, please.
Okay, so as you can see, a lot of people, whether they're doing hybrid or online supervised or online unsupervised, are still doing these online types of exams. And so people, by and large, in my experience, have found these unsatisfactory or hard to manage. So we were sort of thinking about what were the issues with the online exams. And for good or bad, these are some of the things that people were saying. So they were saying that in the online exam format, and Nazim mentioned this too, that multiple choice has become much more common as a way of assessing mathematics. So that's the thing. They've also said that as a positive, people have had to really think about the sorts of questions that they're asking students and how they write their exam questions. And sometimes that's, I guess, shifted them out of their complacency or their comfort zone a little bit, and that's not always a bad thing. What we will discuss, I guess, at the end, though, is when you change the method of writing questions, are you doing that because you think that's better and better able to assess what the students are learning, rather than I'm only doing this because it's the only way I can do it online? So what's the driver? If the assessment and doing the assessment well is the driver, that's great. If the driver is I have to do it this way because of the online, that's not so good. So that's one thing that we need to tease out. Obviously, for a lot of our staff, the administration and invigilation responsibility has been huge. So a lot of that stuff that's normally taken care of by the university has now been devolved to academics like us, who are spending a lot more of their time organising the running of exams, and that's been a huge burden. Workload is already high. Of course, the administration adds to the workload, but also just thinking about rewriting the exams and how you manage exams online has also added to the workload. And of course, the academic integrity and how you assess the students, how you police what they're doing, how you manage it when they've committed academic integrity breaches has also meant a huge impost on staff time. And to be honest, it's put a bit of a downer on our jobs. Nobody really wants to be the academic integrity police. It's not great for people's morale. Why are we doing this? Well, lots of people, of course, have said it's a money saver for the universities. They're just saying it's all about cost. It's got nothing to do with anything else except finances. And of course, the cost shift has gone back to the school. It might cost less for the university, but it doesn't mean overall it costs less, because that cost shift means that schools and divisions who are running these things are now picking up the cost of running those exams. So that's different than saving money overall. So people were talking about take-home exams too. So they also talked about the possibility that students can cheat without them knowing about it. So that's a downer, obviously, for take-home papers. It's hard to know what students have had help with, so that sort of borders a little bit on collusion. But is that collusion with a friend, or a collusion maybe with your dad who's an engineer, or a collusion with your mum who's a mathematician or a school teacher? So we don't know how they've had help at home with take-home papers, their big brother or their big sister. Some people said take-home papers are really great because that mimics the real world. So we don't have, in the workplace, we're not sitting in exam rooms, we're working on things unsupervised in this way. So they think that's a good thing. And lots of people are doing this kind of hybrid model. So hybrid in this talk means on campus for students who are here and online for students who are still overseas. So we've got this mixed mode of offering exams. And of course, some people are saying they think that's a really good thing because some of our students still can't get to the country and we couldn't assess them any other way. So issues for students, and I'm thinking about this for students, about online exams, whether they're supervised or unsupervised, doesn't really make that much difference, to be frank. And of course, academic integrity was ubiquitous in almost everybody who was talking about online exams of some format, talked about the possibility of, and the fact that it's leading to higher academic integrity breaches. They find it hard to judge what the students know. They're asking questions in different ways, so they're not quite sure where the students are sitting. And they say that there's been a noticeable jump in their results. So students are doing much better. Now, our university hierarchy would say, oh, well, that just tells us that online exams are more successful because students are feeling comfortable and they feel relaxed and they're performing much better on these online exams. Oh, I don't think there is any academic integrity. They're just doing a lot better. We know that that's probably not the case. On the other side of the coin, it leads a lot to student stress, and I think we've mentioned that too, and it's certainly the case in my university where students are being supervised online. They have to set up their space and they're being overseen. They don't like being watched. They go offline. They're not sure if their connection's going to drop out. They don't know if their PDF is going to work. So it actually adds a whole layer of responsibility and stress to them to make sure that they stay online and their results are uploaded. So that's a real downside for them. Some students are just refusing to do online exams because of privacy issues. They don't like people seeing into their space, which is also fair. And because of the connection issues, they might have, they're in rural areas, they might have dodgy connections. And I think it's also hard on students because sometimes the instructions that they have to follow just to get their paper uploaded and submitted are quite complicated, especially when English isn't their first language. Lots of kids are in China. They may need to get VPNs and all of that kind of stuff to actually sit the exam. So these instructions are complicated. So there's lots of ways, apart from generally just going out and deliberately cheating. There are lots of things that go wrong with students that put them behind the eight ball.
So back to the numbers. Is the format different from that used prior to 2020? Well, no real surprises there. Only 7 responses say that they were still examining the same way. 45 has changed. Will you return to pre-COVID exams? There's a lot of uncertainty. People don't know. Either they're not going to return in a significant number of cases, or by far the majority, people don't know, and that's adding to anxiety amongst academics, I think. But we just don't know what the hell's going on.
Or how long for.
Or how long for.
Sort of like a semester, we still don't, some people don't know now what they're doing by the end. Doesn't know what he's doing.
This question is interesting. Is the exam format optimal? The majority of people in Australia and New Zealand are saying no. This is one of the few questions that I've looked at all of the results. In the UK, it's about, Ireland, it's about 50-50. But the North American responses are the exact opposite. Almost everybody's happy with what they're doing. Now, we've got to tease that out. I don't know what we're doing. We haven't teased that apart yet, but it's just interesting that it's a complete reversal for the US and Canada responses to everybody else. But certainly here in Australia and in New Zealand, we're not happy. But we also aren't completely consistent on what we think would be the best. Certainly on-campus supervised come out as the highest number. But we do have some people who want no final exams. A few who want the hybrid system. Obviously very few who want online supervised or unsupervised, and some suggestions for others to take home papers. But it's interesting that there are some academics amongst our own ranks who would rather have no final exam or who prefer a take-home paper.
Okay, so just looking then at the comments for that question, when we asked colleagues what exam format would be better than the one they're currently using, anybody who cited online unsupervised exams gave a variety of options as better, including take-home papers. So nobody said, yep, that's great, I'd like to keep that. So that was sort of telling. And two of those respondents even said no exam would be better than an online unsupervised exam. So it's very unsatisfactory, not fit for purpose. So that's pretty clear. For those doing online supervised exams, 8 of those people said on campus would be better. They want to bring it back to campus. And 6 cited a variety of other options, including on-campus, supervised and hybrid. So I think at this point in time, a lot of us do still have students overseas. We're very mindful of being able to assess them, and we're not sure whether this is going to continue into the future. So our university is really encouraging our international students to come back to campus. What that looks like in 2023 isn't clear at this stage. What else? So we asked on the survey, what else should we know about your situation? And of course, the academic integrity just came up over and over again. Additional workload, so people talked quite at length about the additional workload that was happening at the university. But then they went into something that's really actually very, very important, and that's reputational damage. So if we get a reputation as an institution where students aren't really supervised, they can hand in things that they didn't write themselves, and we give them degrees anyway, then sooner or later that will bite us. Not just because of the accreditation bodies, where like Engineers Australia might say, you know, we won't have engineers from your university because they actually don't know what they're doing. But I think what we also forget is that students come to our institutions because they think they have high standards. And if the students who are doing the right thing think that they're going to be competing against people who aren't, they're going to stop coming because their degree is not going to be worth as much to them as it was in the past. So we need to keep our students in mind as being our stakeholders as well. And somebody said, you know, our university allows face-to-face exams for subjects that lead to some kind of accreditation path. How hypocritical is that? If they can do it for accreditation, they can do it for everybody. So it's not that they can't do it, it's just that they don't want to. And one of the things, and this goes back to the comment that I mentioned from Kaz, is that people are feeling that management doesn't seem to care. So when you talk to them about academic integrity or workload, they're not really paying attention. So they feel that the university is under a significant pressure to cut costs, especially because revenue has been cut to universities, and really this is the driver for everything that happens in assessment. And there's also a sense that the university management is disconnected from the core business of the university. And whether that is true or not may depend on your university. But I would say, even if they are connected to some of the university's core business, I think mathematics in particular is always outside their sphere of understanding. They don't really understand what it's like to do a maths exam, how difficult that is to do online, problems with software and all the rest of it. Much of our university administration has a very humanities or arts idea of the world, and they can understand what it's like for those people, but less so in mathematics, because it's not lab science. If you talk to them about lab science, they go, oh yeah, I can understand how you can't dissect something online, but they can't really see what mathematics is like.
I think there's something in the Australian or one of the papers the other day about that, about the breakdown of universities by discipline. It's humanities and business.
I've got an article from 2019 on that.
Oh, was that?
It was probably me who sent it to you. Yeah, it's from a report that I can't access. Library. Yeah.
So other things that people said to us, as we've talked about before, it's been an opportunity for people to rethink the way they write their exams. So, for example, building in the use of software. And we talked about this, it's the same with online teaching. We were sort of on that edge of, people sort of putting more things online and using technology more in their teaching, standing on the fence and wondering whether to take that step forward. And the pandemic really made people jump the fence in some ways. And the same has been true with exams. So building in the use of software into their assessment. Some people said they want to go back face-to-face, so on campus invigilated exams, but with students being able to use some kind of device so that they can still upload their paper, because a lot of people actually like marking online. And we've seen today that there's been a bit of a difference in opinion on that. At our university, people are using Gradescope, and they find that really good for, managing the papers, not losing papers, having multiple people mark the same paper at the same time. So Adam might be marking questions 1 and 2, Michael's marking questions 3 and 4. They don't have to wait for each other to swap the papers, so they can do that simultaneously. So that's been really good in some ways. So they like that electronic format. And some people said they learned to write much better questions because of the way they've had to think about it, basically to make the questions, cheat-proof online. In terms of the future, some people have already said that their exams are back on campus. So that's sort of returning to normal. Some people say exams are back on campus, but we're having to do it ourselves. So they're doing the work. Some people expect that the exams will be returning soon to face-to-face, but they're worried that this is only a temporary situation. So they're thinking, well, okay, they're allowing us to do it now, but I know that the conversations are happening above me that says, but in the long run, we're going to end up with our exams online. Some of our staff are saying they've got the choice between a few different options, and they might be able to do A, B or C, and that's their input. They can't decide what those options are, but they can make a choice between them. Some are doing face-to-face exams, but at their own cost. So I can do them in my school, but the school has to pay for it themselves. Most people say they've only got feedback as their mechanism to influence the discussion. So I can write a letter to my DDC, I can tell my head of school, but it doesn't go anywhere. I can say what I think, but it's not having any influence. And a few respondents who are in leadership positions in the university have said that they've got some input into the process. Of course, if any of you can get into leadership positions in your university, take on those jobs, get on the committee, that's a fantastic way to influence the conversation, or even to make people aware of what it's like in a maths school. If we don't have representation in our universities, then they're never going to know what it looks like for us. So take those roles on if they ever come your way. So most staff said they have no part in the decision making. I think that's the same slide. I think we just got it. Okay, so that's sort of what we had to show you from the survey results today. So I think there's a lot of conversations to be had there, and one is around the drivers of assessment. Are we doing this assessment because we think it's great, or because it's the only option we have and we're being driven by the formats we're allowed to use? What's the student voice in this conversation? We know the negatives about, we're providing opportunities for students to behave badly, but a lot of our students who behave really well are suffering because of the situation. But also this idea of a voice. Now, I'm going to use the word manifesto only because it's a nice word and I think it's a good word. So how can we put together, when we get the results of this survey and the feedback from this group, how do we put that together as an action item?